I will be recreating this picture and this picture, which are both expansions and also require the use of firefly copper lights. Well, at least for this picture. This picture obviously didn't have the lights. But this picture is interesting because it started off not like a square, but like this. And then I expanded the top of the frame to make it into a square, which I will show you how to do. And I kind of did the same with this picture because originally it looked like this. So I expanded the frame on the left and right side and filled up the spaces with extra pictures of the pool. And then I did some color toning with Visco. So this tutorial is basically just going to focus on these two pictures, how I put them together, and how I do the color toning in Visco and also in Photoshop. So this is my friend Mona. She is amazing and beautiful and talented and smart, everything. I could go on. And just for fun, here's just some of the other pictures that we took that day before going on with the tutorial. So we were making like heart bokeh shapes and stuff. These lights just come from Amazon. So they're called Firefly Copper Lights. You could purchase them from like $15 to $30 and they're pretty awesome. You should shoot with a really small aperture when you're working with these kinds of lights so that you can get more of that bokeh effect. So this is the picture that we're going to start off with, and I have Visco VSCO. I have package 1. This is package 1. And I also have package 6. And I like to use a little bit of both, but mostly I like package 6 the best. So I'm going to go down about halfway. And then I'm going to drag the mouse so slightly over each preset. And you could see here in this little box that you can see the preview for each preset. So I know they look a little dark and not the way exactly I'd want it to look, but that's why we set the preset and then adjust the preset in Lightroom. So right now I'm just looking for something that kind of catches my eye. I kind of like this one. Now keep in mind it's not going to look exactly the same as the original edit because I'm recreating this picture, so it may look a little bit different, but I'm going to try and match it up just as close as I could get to the original. And just to see a before and after, hit Y on your computer and it'll show you the side-by-side before and after view. So this is what it looks like before and after so far after hitting one preset. And I'm liking it, but of course it's a little too dark and we need to brighten that up. So the first thing I'm going to do is go to my blacks and take away some of the blacks. And you can see that just brightens the picture up. That's usually the first step I do after applying a Visco preset, unless I take away some of the darks first. So there you go, and just to compare the before and after, this is what it looks like. I don't want to make it too bright, so I'm going to lower that darkness a little bit because I still want it to look natural. I'm going to raise the lightness here a little bit just to bring up lights. Lights works a little bit differently than exposure. I prefer to use a little bit of exposure and more lights. So I use a lot more lights than exposure. And I like to reduce the highlights after adding some lights. It just gives kind of like a soft feel to the picture. And then I'm going to bring the image, before I bring the image into Photoshop, I'm going to apply some green. That's something I learned from Holly Rose Stones. First you apply the Visco presets and then you add a little bit of green. So that's what it looked like before the green, and now I'm just going to apply a tad touch of green. Always important to keep that in mind. And then I'm going to go to Photo, Edit in Adobe Photoshop to bring the image from Lightroom into Adobe Photoshop. So now I have the image in Photoshop. The first thing I'm going to do is go to my curve layers here, my curves tool. I don't need to brighten it up, so I'm just going to put a dot there in the middle. And then I'm going to reduce the highlights, which is something I just love doing in photographs, just to give a softer feel to the picture. You don't want to get too carried away and reduce the highlights too much because the picture can look a little muddy, but it's whatever your preference is. Then I might raise this to make it even softer. Bring this down. Let's see the before and after so far. So this is the before and after so far. Then I'm going to go to my reds channel. I like to bring out the red highlights. So I'm going to take this little dot here, this little dot, drag it to the left. And you can see that just starts to make the picture just bring out those beautiful red highlights. And I always love the way red highlights make the skin appear. It's just beautiful, it's natural. Then I'm going to go to my greens, add a little bit more green highlight as well. Ooh, I like that. That looks nice. Go to my blues. I kind of like to add some yellows within the highlights, the whites of the picture. So I'm going to bring this line down to bring out some of those beautiful yellows that I love. And the image is starting to look like the original now, so that's good. So this is a before and after so far. Now I'm going to go to my vibrance and saturation, and I'm just going to add more vibrance and saturation. And of course it's making the skin look freaking crazy, so what we're gonna do is go to our brush tool, and we want black paint over white paint, excuse me, so that you know we're painting away. I don't want to erase from it totally because I like a tiny bit of saturation in the skin. So I'm going to my opacity and I'm going to bring it down to about 50. And my flow will be about 41. Make this a little bigger. And now I'm just going to brush over where I want to erase away. So now I'm just going to brush over where I want to erase away from. And you can see that's just getting rid of some of that saturation. Because it's just a little too much. But I like the picture though, I think it's beautiful. I'm going to zoom in a little bit just because I want to show you the details of like the water going over her body. I just think it's like really pretty. I just think the water looks really cool, and so does obviously my friend. She looks amazing. Let's take a little more away. Then I'm going to duplicate this vibrance and saturation layer to see how it looks with a little bit more vibrance and saturation. Ew, too much. Well, actually, let's bring it back and then reduce the fill and opacity to around 50% so it's not overdone. And just a tad more. So that looks good. Now I'm going to image canvas size because I want to make this picture into a square. So to do that, I'm going to hit this bottom arrow so that the white space appears on top of the canvas. Then I want this to be a perfect square, so we need the width and the height to match up. So 23.4 for the width and the height. Bam! Or not yet. Bam! Now your picture's a perfect square. Weird! Normally it's white here with that extra space. I don't know why it turned yellow. Let's redo that. Let's go to image, canvas size, 23.4. I want the color to be white, so it looks like it's selected white here. So let's see. Damn! Oh well, that's okay. Now I'm going to flatten all the layers, which I know some people probably would tell you not to do, but that's just my way of doing it. Now I'm going to my lasso selection tool right here, and I'm going to create a selection that we can add more pool water to the yellow space, to the space on top. I'm going to be careful not to select my friend in the selection because obviously we don't want any of that in the top part of the picture. So once you see the marching ants, once your selection is complete, hit Control Copy, then hit Control Paste. And now I have this extra little layer kind of floating around. So you can see I'm going to place it on top here. Well, there's more yellow space to be filled up. So I'm going to hit Command T on my Mac keyboard to transform the layer. I'm going to bring the line down to cover the white space. And then bring this across a little bit. No, actually, I want to keep that blue in there, so that looks good like that. Bring this up. And voila, there you go. Now there's these little lines here. We want to blend them together, so I'm going to create my layer mask. You create a layer mask by hitting this button with the circle in the square. So now we have our layer mask, and now I'm going to select my paintbrush tool right here, and I'm going to paint away. Oh, well, I have to change the opacity and flow back to 100. So now that that's done, I'm going to just erase away. And you can see it's still bringing back some of those yellow lines. So I'm going to hit X on my Mac keyboard to bring up white over black paint so I can paint back in and just do that. And then I may as well create a new layer by hitting this button, go to my clone tool, and just perfect this little jagged line that we don't want there. So just to see what that looked like before and after of just that little detail. Awesome. So the next step I'm going to do is apply selective color adjustment layers by hitting this tool. I love this tool, I use it all the time. I think the reds are a little too much, so let's add a little bit of cyans to the reds so they're not just too crazy looking. Let's go to the yellows and add a little bit more yellow, just to give a more painterly vibe to the picture. Maybe a little cyan. No, I don't like the cyan. Actually, let's reduce the cyan, make it red. Yeah, I just reduced the cyans from the yellows, which makes the yellows a little bit more red. So I like that. Maybe a little less actually. And then greens, there are no greens. Let's go to cyans, add more cyan. So that looks good. Maybe a little yellow. No, I don't think so. We can skip that. Neutral. Let's add a tiny bit of cyan to the neutrals. And then reduce, let's go to the blacks and reduce the blacks so that the blacks are a little softer. Yeah, I kind of like that. So this is a before and after of the selective color adjustment layers. This is what it looked like before. This is what it looked like after. Before, after. Before, after. Okay, so now we have this image in Photoshop. So I want to do a little composite instead of just editing Visco straight away, because I always do the composite before Visco. So the first step I'm going to do is go to Image, Canvas Size. Now I want this to be a perfect square like the last one, so 23.4 would be good. Now we have this extra white space that we want to fill up. So what I'm going to do is get out my lasso tool and just create a selection of the pool where the model doesn't appear. And then I'm going to hit Control Copy, Control Paste. And now I have this extra layer floating around, which I'm going to transform by hitting Command T on my Mac keyboard. Stretch this down. Bring it to here. Actually, we can use the clone tool for that extra bit of space. To make it easier, I'm going to duplicate layer number 1 and then go to transform, flip horizontal so we can place it on the other side. Just like that. Yay! Sweet. So we're going to create our layer mask on both layers and erase away from the jagged lines so that they blend together. So I'm going to make this a little bit bigger and just start erasing away with my paintbrush tool, black paint over white paint. I'm going to paint back in a little bit here. Create a layer mask on this layer. Erase away. Paint this back in. This part's a little light, this part's a little dark. So I'm going to start cloning from here first. Oh no, we just cloned her hair, so we're going to clone over that little part. And the larger your clone brush is, the better your composite will blend together. Just make sure you're cloning stuff that you actually want. So I'm going to make this large so that it blends together well. Or better, I should say. Well, we can perfect that side in a minute. Let's go to this side. Get rid of these nasty little lines. So now I'm going to reduce the brush to 50% opacity and flow so that I could just clone and just blend it together a little bit better, because if it was at 100 it'd be harder to blend in the lights and the darks together as well as with a 50% opacity and flow brush, if that tiene sentido for all you Spanish speakers. So now we're just going to click this layer on and off, and that's pretty good. For blending in, you know, lights and darks together can be pretty difficult. So I'm going to flatten this, and I'm going to hit Control Save. Oh wait, there's a little space I forgot to clear up. Hang on one second. So I'm just going to clone that baby in, hit Control Save. Then we're going to go back to Lightroom, where now my new version of what I just hit save is saved, but the old version is still there. It hasn't been affected, so it's not like the file has been overwritten or anything. So this is the original. This is what we just did. Original, just did. So now it's time for my favorite part, to go to VSCO. So let's go to package 1 just to show you how that is a little bit different. It may make the first preset, oh, that's actually pretty good. So this preset, I always like the first preset on package 1 of VSCO. I think it works. So there's that. I'm going to go to my blacks, raise up the blacks. And then the original edit had kind of a lot more green in it. So I'm going to try and find a greenish preset. Yeah, something like that. Raise the blacks. Let's see what other presets are there. But you know, I think this one will do. So now I'm going to my greens. I'm going to add in more green, just a touch of green. Ooh, and look at that baby come to life. Something else I haven't done yet is add in the little bokeh lights on the left side, but no worries, I'll show you how to do that too. So then I go to my whites. I like to bring down the whites to give a softer look to the picture. I don't really touch the shadows or highlights too much because I do all that in curves or in the lights and highlights down here. So let's bring down the highlights. I guess it's not picking up too many highlights anyways. Bring out some of the darks just to make the picture brighter. Some more lights in there. And then to see a before and after so far, so you can see the green, adding the greens after the green color toning on the white balance after adding a preset really makes a huge difference. So after you add a VSCO preset, always add a little bit more green with your color toning. This is where you do it right here. This is the color toning. So always add a little bit more green. That's what I mean. So now I'm gonna bring the image back into Photoshop. I'm going to Photo, Edit in Adobe Photoshop. Edit a copy with Lightroom adjustments. I'm going to select that. So the first thing I want to do is maybe I'll bring in this picture for now, and then I'll add in these bokeh lights, and I'll show you how I did that. So right now I'm going to select the lights that we want to bring onto the picture. So I'm using my lasso tool to do that. And so these lights, I was holding them, but I took them from a different picture where she was in the water and I was holding the lights from the ground. You can see obviously the tones are different because, you know, this is I'm bringing on the layer of the edited picture. So I'm going to create my layer mask and just erase away. So it's not perfect, but just kind of showing you my process of how I add an extra bokeh. Okay, so I'm going to merge those layers, then I'm going to go to my adjustments, curves, of course. I'm going to soften the entire picture by reducing the highlights. And then I'm going to bring this to the right to bring out the blacks a little bit, which I think, you know, adds a nice little contrast to the picture. So let's try the green highlights. Yes! Now it's coming to life with the green highlights. Now I'm going to bring up the blues a tad bit on the left just so the shadows have a twinge of blue. So let's see, I'm going to reduce opacity and fill of that layer a tiny bit so it's not super dominant. Then I'm going to go to my adjustments, selective color adjustment layers. Let's bring out the reds a little more if we can. Oh yeah, we can. Cool. Let's see what else. Let's bring out some of the yellows to bring out the bokeh. Let's go to cyans. More cyan, I think. Yeah. Yes, more cyan. Reduce the magenta to get more green if that's the look you're going for. Let's go to the blues, add in more cyans. Well, I guess it's not really picking up too many blues. Maybe add more yellow to the cyans. Let's go to cyans, add more yellow. Yeah, I kind of like that. It adds that green look. Let's go to the whites. Let's see if it picks up on anything. Oh yeah, so these are the whites. I like to edit the whites a lot. So let's bring them out and make them yellow. Yay, I like it. I like it. Ooh, too much. Yeah, let's make this a little more red, the neutral colors, by reducing the cyans -4. I think that looks good. Then go to the blacks. Bring that up. Just a tad. Maybe reduce that. Just a tad. And then, ooh, that's interesting. See, there's so much you can do with selective color adjustment layers, and it really just gives you full control, total control over the colors that you don't really get with curves. So this is before, after selective color adjustment layers. Before, after, before, after, before, after. Okay, so this is the final picture. I really love how it came together. You can see my friend holding the firefly copper lights through her fingers here, and she just has the most beautiful hair. So I always wanted to take a picture of like a beautiful girl in the pool with her hair kind of looking like that, holding the lights. So it really just came together, and I couldn't thank my friend Mona enough for participating and allowing me to capture your never-ending Egyptian goddess beauty. I love you to death. Anyways, I really hope you enjoyed these 2 pictures and these edits that I did. If you have any questions about anything, feel free to add me on Facebook, message me. I'll have my links in the description below. Make sure to like this picture, hit subscribe so you don't miss future tutorials. It would really just help me out a lot. Thank you for joining me on this tutorial, and I will see you guys for the next one.